Your camera features a variety of shooting modes ranging from fully automatic to completely manual. This gives you a lot of flexibility and creative control over your photos. You can adjust the exposure, shutter speed, and depth of field settings on your camera to help capture the pictures you want. As you become more familiar with these concepts and principles, you'll improve your ability to capture the best pictures possible. Let's begin with the fully automatic point-and-shoot mode. This is designated on our EPL1's mode dial with a P. That stands for program mode. In this point-and-shoot mode, the camera will adjust shutter speeds and aperture settings based on your current shooting conditions. You can choose different combinations of those two settings without changing exposure by pressing the exposure compensation button that is also the up arrow button. This is known as program shift. The settings are chosen on the EPL1 with the up and down arrows. Other pen cameras use the main or sub command dials. The next setting we'll discuss is the aperture priority mode, shown with an A on the mode dial. When shooting in this mode, you'll set the aperture value and then the camera will calculate the shutter speed necessary for a proper exposure. On our EPL1, after pressing the exposure compensation or up arrow button, use the up and down arrows to adjust the aperture settings. On other pen cameras, this is done using the main or sub command dials. Smaller f numbers will result in a shorter depth of field, meaning the areas in front of or behind the focus point will have a softer focus. Larger f numbers will increase the depth of field. That will mean a larger range of the image, both foreground and background, will remain in focus. The next setting is the shutter speed priority mode, indicated with an S on the mode dial. Use this mode when you want to set the shutter speed and have the camera automatically select the correct aperture value. Faster shutter speeds will freeze action without blurring the image. Slower shutter speeds will blur an action scene. Very slow shutter speeds can be used to capture scenes in low light or to show streaks of light from a vehicle. Make sure you use a tripod when using slow shutter speeds. On the EPL1, we change shutter speeds using the exposure compensation or up arrow button, and then use the up and down arrows. Your pen camera may use the main or sub command dials. You also have the option of taking complete creative control of your camera using the manual mode, indicated with an M on the mode dial. With this setting, you will select both the aperture value and the shutter speed. To do this on the EPL1, press the exposure compensation or up arrow button while in this mode. Use the left and right arrow buttons to choose the aperture and the up and down arrow buttons to choose the shutter speed. Other pen cameras use a combination of the main and sub command dials to make those adjustments. You can choose to adjust the exposure of your images using the exposure compensation feature. This is done on the EPL1 by pressing the exposure compensation or up arrow button and using the left and right arrows to make the image brighter or darker. Moving to the negative side will make the image darker. Moving to the plus side will make the image lighter. On other pen cameras, you make those adjustments using the main or sub command dials. The ISO setting on your camera affects the image sensor's sensitivity to light. The higher the number, the less light that is required to properly expose the image sensor. You can either have the camera automatically choose the sensitivity or you can set it manually. You can change the ISO setting on the EPL1 by pressing the Start OK button to enter live control. Select an ISO option using the left and right arrow keys and press the Start OK button to confirm. On other pen cameras, the ISO setting can be enabled by the direct ISO button or by using the live control function in combination with the main command dial. Higher ISO settings will allow you to shoot in lower light conditions but may introduce noise or grain into the images. You can set the ISO to auto to have the camera determine the ISO adjustment for you. Your camera can measure the brightness of the scene you're shooting using what is called exposure metering. To choose an exposure metering option, enter live control by pressing the Start OK button on your pen camera. On the EPL1, you will use the left and right arrow keys to select the metering option. You have 5 options to choose from. Digital ESP metering measures the exposure in 324 areas of the frame and optimizes exposure for the current scene or subject. This is a good general use setting. Center weighted average metering gives an average measurement between the subject and the background lighting, but places more weight on the subject at the center. Spot metering measures a small area, about 2% at the center of the frame, with the camera pointed at the subject that you want to meter. Spot metering with highlight control increases the spot metering exposure. This ensures that bright subjects in your scene will appear bright. Spot metering with shadow control lowers the spot metering exposure. This means that dark subjects in your scene will appear dark.